Hello and good afternoon, Xbox Nation. Welcome to this week's new episode of the Xbox Lunch Break Special. I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL, and of course, we have an outstanding show for you today. For you today, listen, lots of news. Again, it's the summer; people are going away. Still getting those news bombs, and we could thank Jez Corden of Windows Central, and of course, the Xbox 2 podcast. I'm very good friends with Jez, an amazing journalist. Listen, he dropped 2 bomb stories, one today, one over the weekend, regarding the confirmation that Xbox is working with Capcom on the dreaded MT framework situation. And folks, we got to talk about that because, listen, I'm a fighting game nerd, but more importantly, I'm a Capcom stan, and I don't care what you think about it. To get these games on Xbox are a really big deal. We're going to break down why that is. We got some breaking news regarding the next expansion, which probably leaked, and we've seen a lot of people reporting on it, but I do have the Jez Corden Windows Central article, which of course we'll read verbatim. And, well, it turns out that Phil Dominus Maximus Aurelius Spencer was right all along about VR, and again, not bringing it to the platform, saved Microsoft potentially millions of investment dollars. Well, Sony can't say the same thing because, my God, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talk about the PlayStation VR 2.0, and it's not good. Let's just say that. But before we, entertain you, as it were, let's introduce my co-host today, Fuzzy Belvedere. Fuzzy, what's going on, brother? Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Hey, everyone in the chat. Thanks for showing up and supporting us here. And man, some interesting stories and whatnot. But yeah, we're going to definitely get into it. And Starfield being one of those lead topics. Man, I can't wait for that DLC and finding out that we're going to have probably another one lined up shortly after. Looking forward to it. So can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, look, Starfield is still in the conversation. I have not played, I have not picked it up, I have not taken advantage, to be honest with you, of the mods. Shame on me. I've just been playing so many other things. Folks, I just want to throw this out there real quick. I don't get paid for doing this, but you got to play Dungeons of Hindenburg. My God, wow, and wow again. I'll put it to this way. It's so unique. It's so different. I honestly cannot put a thumb on it as to why I love it so much. Like it's got so much going on. It is so gorgeous to watch. It is so much fun to play in Xbox Game Pass. It's absolutely well worth your time. It's so unusually done. The story, the characters, the action, the exploration. I highly recommend it. I have a strong suspicion it's going to wind up in my top 10 of 2024. I'm having such a great time with it. That's all I can say about it. But look, Fuzzy, you're Mr. Starfield. Folks, if you didn't know, this guy has like 18 saves of different characters. I don't know how he does it, ladies and gentlemen. It's pretty ridiculous, but no, he has about 4, and he loves the game. I love the game. I think a lot of people in the chat right now love the game, regardless of what the trolls of the interwebs want to try and tell you about how terrible of a Bethesda game it is. It is not. It is a phenomenal adventure if you accept it for what it is, and I think really it's not hard to do. You're going to enjoy the heck out of yourself. But we got some breaking news, folks. And again, this story comes to us from Jez Corden of Windows Central, also of the Xbox 2 podcast with Randall Thor. And he wrote a story this morning. Now, again, I saw a lot of different people reporting on it. Hazardor Gaming had something up. Clobriel also had something up. I saw a few other people posting it, but I didn't see any stories. And this is an actual written article on Windows Central, which, of course, I will include into the show notes of today's show. So if you want to give it a read, you can go and do that. Well, the lead title says this, folks. Starfield's Shattered Space expansion hasn't even launched yet, but we may have already known the name of the next DLC set for 2025. Shattered Space hasn't even hit the launch pad yet, but the next Starfield expansion might have just been outed. Um, in the what you need to know section, he goes on to say this, folks. Starfield is the most recent game from Bethesda's core team behind the Elder Scrolls and the mainline Fallout games. Starfield is an expansive sci fi odyssey whose galactic ambitions garnered it to be a bit of a mixed reception among Bethesda's core fans, despite attracting millions of players. Starfield has received solid post-launch support thus far, and many are hoping that the upcoming expansion, Shattered Space, will add even more of the new features. Finally, it goes on to say, but what about after 2024? A new trademark suggests that the next Starfield expansion may indeed be called Starborn. Now, look, obviously, no spoilers here, folks. The Starborn play a massive and major role into the story of Starfield. Again, this is a trademark. It is probably going to be called something else, but this is what they put down, Fuzzy, as the trademark holding spot, Starborn. I would imagine it is going to be a continuation of the Shattered Space DLC that we are expected to get later this year. This is a big deal. And I think what it says to anyone that has already invested, plenty of time, potentially hundreds of hours into this game, is that it doesn't seem like there is light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the content ending, right? Like there's no end to the content, whether it be mod support, it's there. Whether it be new, upgrades for the current system, we're getting that on a regular basis. Things that didn't work are now working. Sometimes these updates, they break the game. It hasn't happened as of yet, but at least the updates are coming. We do have, of course, the big update that's going to include land vehicles. I freaking can't wait. It's really going to change how I personally explore a planet, how long I stay on said planet, because at least now you're going to be able to drive around instead of jumping around, which gets a little monotonous, to be honest. But we have Shattered Space. We know that it's going to be on one planet, Fuzzy. We know it's going to be a tight narrative, a story-driven, adventure that's going to be you stuck on this planet. And well, we don't know why. We don't know why you can't fly to another planet, but I'm sure they will tell us. And maybe it's something like the ship got stolen. Maybe it got exploded. I don't know, but we're going to find out soon enough. But I got to tell you, knowing already that they are locked and loaded for 2025 and the next expansion should give anyone confidence that the time that you invested into this game is not for nothing. Let's get your hot take there, Fuzzy.
Well, first of all, I'm still, well, I haven't touched it in a little bit, but I'm still a huge fan of Starfield, and Starborn being the copyright or trademark name, potentially with the DLC being centered around that. I'm all for it, because that was one of those things that we kind of saw at the tail end of the original trailer, where it's like almost like the Jedi type powers and stuff, and the fact that they had that mixed into a game where it made sense, and you're pretty much going through different dimensions to hopefully further those powers, or strengthen those powers and things along those lines. Hopefully, no spoilers. I mean, game's been out a little or close to a year at this point, so hopefully I'm not spoiling anything. But like when it comes to the whole Starborn like lore and everything behind that, and if they go deeper into that and how it either came to be, or somehow some of the encounters that you've come across, you wind up reliving those, but on the other side of how the Starborn are themselves. I'm all for it. I mean, they had a cool spaceship. Well, they have a cool spaceship in the game. If you haven't already, fought one of those or acquired one of those through, progress in the game and stuff like that. But imagining that there's probably a hub of Starborn, or like a planet of just Starborn, which it could be like almost the equivalent of like a
That
GTA
is dope.
5 planet itself at that point. Lawlessness, all to the wind kind of thing. But I'm curious to see, just based on the tech and some of the stuff as far as the abilities that the Starborn have. I'm curious to see if they take that even further, where there's like almost like Highlander, there could only be one thing, where it might wind up being, not say a battle royale or anything along those lines, but have it where your objective is to be the most powerful Starborn, and maybe end all of the other Starborns before they further their powers, or something to that effect. But it'd be curious to see just how deep this next DLC goes. I'm already pumped for Shattered Space. Looking forward to finding out more about the House of Arun, and see if there's a way to either join or fall into that a little bit deeper than what you can in the current story and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely I'm definitely looking forward to it. So can't wait.
My next question for you, Fuzzy, is, shout out to Will Broke Boy Lewis, who says, wait. According to the blue team or blue side, Starfield's a dead game. Why is it getting more updates? Sarcasm. Now, he's right. Depending on what publication you read, depending on who you listen to on the socials, what podcasts you add to your playlist, some are good, bad, some are just outright terrible. This game has a stigma of not being a finished product. And folks, I don't think I need to reiterate the fact that this game is incredible. There's no way a bad game gets people like Nico, for instance, who's in the chat, to put 1,000 hours into a game, right? There's no way a gamer like Fuzzy Belvedere is going to have 4 different saves with 4 different characters. Again, maybe it's too deep of an RPG for you. And if that's the case, then maybe you've never played a Bethesda game, because usually these games are vast. Whether it be Elder Scrolls, whether it be Fallout, whether it be Starfield, these games are deep and they're big and they give you a lot to do and a lot of freedom to do it. I'm just curious to the stigmatism behind the game that has over 14 million players. I understand it's in Game Pass. I totally get that. But this game is going to continue to grow, like Forza, like Halo, like Gears, like the other Bethesda games before it in Fallout and Elder Scrolls. And millions upon millions of players are going to experience this, and they're going to come back. People like myself who stepped away because they did run through it. I ran through it once. I started my second playthrough. I put a couple hours in. I messed around a little bit with the with the mods. I don't even know how they work, to be honest with you. I could not get my armor on. We'll talk behind the scenes, Fuzzy. You can explain to me what the heck I'm doing wrong here. But needless to say, this game got legs. Yeah. Anything you want to add additionally about people that are going to see this story, that are going to try and poo-poo it? Because I don't see how this is a bad thing, which some podcasts, some content creators are going to try and reverse the engines here and make new DLC, leaked DLC, and the updates a bad thing.
I always look at those that try to spin a story of gaming, positive gaming, or just people enjoying stuff as like not just grifters, but it's like they're in the wrong hobby. Maybe they should join the debate team and debate, other more pertinent things to humanity kind of deal. Because I don't understand. Like, there were a few people on Steam, for example, that had 400 plus hours of playing the game and gave it a bad review. Like, I don't want to say they have mental issues, but like, if I'm not enjoying a game, I'm not giving it 100 hours, let alone 400 hours. Like, I think I would put it down within like the first few hours. But if I'm more persistent to like, hey, maybe it gets better as time goes on, I might give it 20 hours. But if it hasn't grabbed me at 20 hours, that's it. That there's no more of me beating my head against the wall. But there are people out there that put in 400 plus hours and it's like, oh, it's a bad game. I didn't like anything about it. And it's like, well, what were you doing for 400 hours at that point if you didn't enjoy yourself? Um, I always look at the blue team that complain about this game. The minute it gets announced, if it ever does, not putting that out there to speak it into existence or anything along those lines, but if it was announced that it was coming over there, they'd be like celebrating in the streets. One, they don't have a sci-fi game.
Right.
There's rumors that Barlog is working on something. Haven't heard hide or hair about it, so they can keep on wishing and dreaming in that regard. But if it was to come over there, all of a sudden, oh, it's we have No Man's Sky. They would forget all about No Man's Sky and be eating up the Bethesda greatness that this game is. I mean, if you've played a Bethesda game before, this is everything that you've probably wanted out of those games in a sci-fi environment mixed in. Sure, they didn't have land vehicles. I don't really consider it that bad of a deal, but they are listening and adding them at a later date. So look forward to those. I mean, there have been mods out there that, at least on the PC side of things, I'm not sure on the mod store itself, but there have been mods out there that have added mech suits and other land vehicles before. So it's only a matter of time before a lot of other things that you would like to see in this game exist. Like there's already people that have made lightsabers. They don't call them lightsabers because of licensing and whatnot, but it's like this game has not all right. Before you even get to the potential of the mods, it has everything that you would ask out of an RPG. And if you're not really into an RPG, I can kind of understand it. You don't have to play this like an RPG because get you still level up no matter what you do. As far as those things are going to matter, as far as use your preferred weapons of choice, they're going to level up. You use your preferred method of attack or transportation, it's going to level up. You use your preferred method of travel or movement, it's going to level up. So
Yep.
all of those things, you could just play it as, oh, it's an action game and shoot everything that moves kind of deal, and you're still going to get some enjoyment out of it. But for the people that always try to make it seem like, oh, it's a dead game, why are they still supporting it? Obviously, somebody at Microsoft and Bethesda has the metrics to see that it's not a dead game.
Yep.
Sure, there might not be these high numbers of concurrent players because it's a single player game. Those concurrent numbers on Steam usually are centered around something being either recently released, or if it's a multiplayer where, hey, you don't want to have to wait for a match. It's a single player game. You play at your own pace. I wish it had co-op. I'm pretty sure people will mod a co-op type version in it, or maybe they'll just make a open world or MMO out of this down the road. But outside of that, I don't care how many people are playing it on Steam. All I know is if I'm playing it on my Xbox or if I'm playing it on my PC and I'm having a good time, the people that say that this is a waste of space or whatever, I guess they're saying the same thing about No Man's Sky, considering how old that game was and how it cratered shortly after its release because it didn't deliver on its promises. I'm sure they're up in arms about the expansions that always come out for that, or expansions that come out for any game that's more than a couple of years old. I mean, most games you will lose 90% of their player base within the first 6 months, except for some multiplayer games, but even those struggle to keep people on. So I don't know. I come to gaming for the enjoyment, for the entertainment, not to scrutinize to see how many players are playing this very minute, or if this game is a game of a generation. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's a game of a generation for the fact that 10 years from now, people will still be playing this game in modded versions, updated versions, or maybe even potential sequels. I think this game has the legs to carry on, much like the Fallout series, much like the Elder Scrolls series. And for those that don't see it, either they're blind or they're intentionally being this disingenuous curmudgeon or whatever about for whatever reason. And I really don't understand it. It's like if you're a gamer, you're looking to have fun. If this isn't your game, I get it. I totally get it. Like Souls like games are not my games, but I'm not like they should put a stop to these games because it's terrible. It's like they're so hard, and in the reviewing crowd can't do honest reviews because some of them can't even get through the game. No, you're not going to hear that come out of my mouth. It's like, oh, it's a Souls like game. I might try it. All right, I beat my head against the wall, or I threw my controller. I'll move on to the next game. I'm not going to say they should cancel all Souls like games because people enjoy those. It's just not enjoyment for me, but I move
Right.
on. I'm not going to harp over those things. But, people, I guess, they have more fun not being happy than enjoying the hobby that they supposedly love. I don't know.
It's sad, honestly. A lot of it is click motivated for sure. I think that you've seen it time and time again, especially for the gaming media. And again, this is not going to be a pounce on the rabbit kind of a conversation. We're going to move on to the next topic, which I think it has a lot of legs. It's very exciting for me as a video game nerd when it comes to classic fighting games, especially when you mentioned Capcom. But listen, folks, the game is here. 14 million have played it. Not only do you have a DLC releasing at the end of the year that we have a big confirmation on, and obviously, I think for me the big draw and why I'm going to immediately jump back into it and start over again because for me it's the land vehicles. It's being able to really because I don't know about you folks. Like I know that if I am playing a game as big as Starfield, my biggest problem is me personally because I know that if I look at the map, I have a particular point of context. I have to go here to forward the story. I never follow that track. And one of the things that I loved doing specifically about Starfield is the planet, boots on ground exploration. And again, was the jumping the worst thing ever? No, it wasn't. It was a bit annoying. Again, it was fun. The first couple of hours because you're bouncing around and you're trying to get used to it, and now you're. But it always felt like you were walking through quicksand. And one of the things I thought it missed was I. I don't need to ride the vehicle all the way around the planet. I don't need that. But because it's procedurally generated, there is a chance that you're going to run into something that someone else might not ever run into. You take pictures, you take video like I have over here, and that is the magic of this game that you are a explorer and you're finding things that someone may not find. And that's having a land vehicle for at least for me is going to open that wide open. It's going to crack it wide open for me because again, I'm going to be able to do what I normally like to do in these big types of games, spend a significant amount of time in a particular area, i.e., planets, and find things that other people aren't going to find. Whether that be a sunrise, whether that be a moon in the background, whether that be a base. It's going to be very interesting. I cannot wait for it. But I do got to catch up on super chats. Fuzzy, then we're going to get into the next story. The first one of the day comes to us from Sir X-Men. Salute to you, kind sir. He drops a very generous $2 super chat and goes on to say, did I hear Marvel versus Capcom collection? I wish I was in there. Listen, we're going to get into it, brother. I got a story. And again, this comes away of a conversation that Jez Corden had with, of course, his partner of the Xbox 2 podcast, Randall Thor. We're going to get into it because I have a lot to say. We're going to definitely talk about it in a second. Dreadful Sean. Hey, brother, welcome back. It's nice to see you, Sean. And, of course, thank you for the $5 super chat. He goes on to say this. Dungeons of Hindenburg, Indie of the Year, question mark. 1,000%. I could definitely stand behind it. Look, the one complaint that I have, Dreadful Sean, is this is game of the year if it was voice acted. Because again, it's an indie team. It's small. This is indie game of the year. Folks, I'm here to tell you, play this game, please. Now, again, it's not going to be everybody's flavor. It's a RPG. It has a lot of mechanics that on paper, honestly, shouldn't work. And somehow it does. The characters that you meet are so endearing, so different that you want to know about them. And the exploration, there are times where it's wide open in an area that you can just go and find a dungeon and you go do your thing. You can find hidden stuff. There's treasure chests all over the place. There's all kinds of people you could meet. There are NPCs that are just explorers like you that you can come across and get a story from. But there are times where you finish a level and it has like morning, day, and night like cycles, and then you come back to where you start. It's so uniquely done. I'm going to be honest with you, folks. It should not work, and somehow it does. It's just such an endearing game. It's beautifully drawn. I highly recommend it. I honestly like I'm not even gonna front. Like I'm here, I'm enjoying the show, I'm enjoying your company. I can't wait to get off the podcast and go play. Honestly, like last night. Look, I'm an old man. Usually after 10, that's it for me, and it's fine because I'm old. I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I looked at the clock and I'm like, just an hour. I fell back asleep because I know that if I get up at 3, Mrs. Boom is gonna get up for work and find me sitting there. It's that good. It's like I'm thinking about the game when I'm sleeping. That's how you know it's a good game. But thank you, Dreadful Sean, for the $5 super chat. We have here Dwayne Calavito. Hey, Dwayne, welcome to the program, and thank you so much for the very generous $5 super chat. He says this: Starfield is meant to last us until Elder Scrolls think, I believe. You know what? I mean, that you're not wrong. I think that this game has so much legs to it. It's going to be supported for years. The mods are going to be here in full force. We're going to continue to get DLC. I really, in my heart of hearts, believe that there is an MMO coming in the form of a Fallout 76 and an Elder Scrolls Online. I think we are getting it. I don't know when that is, but I think that is the next evolution of this. So you can, hang out with a crew of people potentially. And could you imagine, like, for you and 3 of your buddies, you're in this massive ship, you're hanging out, you're laughing, you're talking on the mics, and you come across, I mean, maybe you're rolling 4 ships deep and you come across a squadron and it's a dogfight. What, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. What if you're on a ship, you land on a planet, and 4 of you and your 3 other buddies and your crew go and find this massive base, and you take on like a gang leader or something, and you loot his stuff. Maybe a la Destiny, there'll even be raids. I mean, it to me, it seems completely limitless. But let me continue. Will Broke Boy Lewis. Well, thank you so much for always being here. And of course, the generosity that continues to come in. He drops a very generous $5 super chat and a little bit of a scandalous kind of a statement here. He says, I still have the J-Dub tweet from back in 2020 or something, like where he's hyped up Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 that was going to be a PlayStation exclusive. Yeah, there you go. I mean, he a lot of people got receipts on that dude. But I mean, listen, you put yourself out there on social media. Sometimes people come for you. Don't do it. That's all I'm going to say. Don't do it. The legendary, my brother Yobi, my brother from another. Hey, Yobi, welcome, brother. And he says this after dropping a very generous $2 super chat. He says, I can't wait for Starfield MMO. Let's go. Indeed, for sure. Giggity08, kind sir, welcome back. And it's nice to see you here. He drops a very generous $2 super chat. And he says, what's your thought on Deadpool 3? I loved it. I saw it on Friday morning. I came out of the theater. I was gonna do an impromptu. Hey, I just saw Deadpool 3. I was so moved by that film. I words are hard to come out the mouth. It for me. Ryan Reynolds and Jack Human, Jack, what's the Jack? Yeah, Jack. Why am I forgetting his name? Hugh Jackman. My God, a brain fart live on the air. Just killed it. The cameos were no spoilers here, folks. I would never do that to you. Are worth the price of admission. Look, there is not. I'm gonna tell you something. The one criticism I walked away from this film is not seeing more. I wanted this to be a 3-hour film, honestly. Like, and again, it's not a spoiler because she's in the trailer. The X-23 character, Daphne, killed it. Like, she was freaking amazeballs. Awesome. I'll put it to this way. I don't know if you're a nerd like me. I love everything comics. I haven't collected books in a long time, but I read them as a kid. This Comic-Con, this whole I watched live, just ridiculous. The Russos are back. RDJ is back. It's Marvel's back, folks. Marvel is back, and actually, I have an announcement. I'm kind of holding on for the channel regarding coverage of Marvel. Stay tuned, folks. I got something. I'm working with somebody in the background to see if I can make this a reality. But let's get to the next story. It just so happens to be, well, about Marvel versus Capcom, ladies and gentlemen. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you to say that I was upset that this was not coming to Xbox. Not because I don't have the ability to play it, because I'm not buying it on a PS5 because I don't really enjoy my time outside of first party stuff on the PS5. But I'm buying it for the Switch. I have a 6-button controller that I bought. It's wired because obviously you don't want any latency. I'm going to play it there. I own Marvel vs. Capcom 1, 2, and 3. I own them on the Dreamcast. I own Marvel vs. Capcom on the OG Xbox. I have them. I actually own them. I have consoles that if I wanted to play them, I can hook them up to the TV. It's 2024, ladies and gentlemen. We shouldn't have to. So I gave Microsoft and Capcom, for that matter, the smoke that they deserve, because I think that if there's one thing that you can put your thumb on when it comes to Xbox, specifically Phil Spencer, and I'm looking at you, Phil, right now, he's always talked up a big game about preserving the ability to play games even when they're old, right? That should be paramount for any console. It has been in a great way for Xbox, Fuzzy. But when it comes to games like this, they always see. I mean, look, Arc System Works have a bunch of games that skipped Xbox. They're released for everyone but Xbox. SNK is another one. A lot of these older games that maybe don't mean a lot to a whole mess of people, but they mean something to me. Those have skipped Xbox on everything except Xbox. And even like Clobriel, shout out to Clobriel, who actually, he was pretty pointed with Xbox. He's like, yeah, exclusively, not on Xbox. And he's not wrong for that statement. Well, the tide might be turning, ladies and gentlemen, because again, thanks to Jez Corden of Windows Central, who has been a busy bee. Well, during the Xbox 2 podcast, and a shout out to Hazador Gaming, who, of course, I'm using his specific tweet here. He goes on to say, rumor, Windows Central Jez Corden says that he has heard that Microsoft is currently looking for a solution to bring the Capcom titles that were announced to Xbox. Marvel vs. Capcom and Great Ace Attorney Chronicles did not come to Xbox due to an engine problem. Now, here I have a response from Jez Corden to this tweet, and he goes, it's not so much an issue with the engine, but it's the dev pipeline or development pipeline. They don't have a team for it right now on Xbox. I keep seeing people say, but back compat, but there's work being done on these titles too. They're not just straight ports, they're getting actual net code. His tweet goes on to say, I just put it up over here. Net code updates and maybe having some licensed aspects tweaked. He finishes it off by saying, at Capcom for Xbox, I mean, so it's a combo of do they think it's worth it, etc. Microsoft should pay for it, in my opinion. And you see, this is where there are two sides to this coin, Fuzzy and Chap. One of which is additional smoke from Microsoft, because I'm sorry to say you're aware of what's coming, what's not releasing on your platform. People like myself, maybe we don't have the biggest voices, but we're customers, we're consumers, we do matter, and our opinions matter. And when I see them not commenting on this stuff, not making, hey, we hear you, like Aaron, he's always on the socials. Bill, always on the socials. Sarah, always on the socials. We didn't hear anything. We saw a lot of people out here, like legitimately complaining about this being just a really this shit sandwich, folks. I'm sorry. That's what it was. And I think that, I hate using the term lazy dev, but I'm going to say lazy publisher, because these are games that some of which were exclusive at one time on Xbox. Now they're exclusively not on Xbox, and that sucks. But I am going to say where I give them flowers now is the fact that there is a conversation happening where they could potentially fix this. Now, whether that means actual dollars that they have to invest, I don't care. You are a $3 trillion company. Xbox makes a ton of money for you. You could spend the ducats to help Capcom bring these games. Use the great team that you have for backwards compatibility to your advantage. We know that Sarabon specifically said they're working for the future of the platform for both backwards and forwards compatibility. Let's see that. Let's see that played out in real life.
Mhm.
Let's get your hot take on this, Fuzzy.
Well, for me, I'm a big fighting game fan. But most of my collection was on PS3 as far as some of the earlier stuff. Coming to Xbox, I mean, obviously we had Killer Instinct and things along those lines, but all the Street Fighters except for Street Fighter Five were on Xbox, and I was happy with that arrangement for the most part, except for the Street Fighter Five, which eventually I did buy it on PlayStation, but begrudgingly. But it was just one of those things where I don't well, I understood the Street Fighter Five deal. PlayStation kicked some funds and helped with the production of that out of their wallets, kind of thing. And I really wish at some point Microsoft would consider doing the same. Now they did to some extent with the Dead Rising series and such, but when it comes to fighting games, that's kind of like one of the core pillars of arcade and video games in general. So for to not be able to partake in these older titles seems a little silly to me, but like I always hope that maybe, just maybe, there was some hope that they would work with Capcom in making a future version or current generation version of these games. Like I would love to see pretty much a mixture of King of Fighters 15 with like Street Fighter 6 characters, going toe to toe. Like if
Yeah,
Microsoft was more into doing stuff like that, then these misses wouldn't bother me as much. But they don't even seem to be interested in that. And I get it. Maybe fighters don't sell as well on the platform. Um, but I almost feel like it's one of those numbers things where bad data leads to bad decisions. Like they
yes,
always talked about, like the DVR, hardly anybody uses it. Well, why do people not use it? Well, it's because it's crappy at this point when you compare it to your nearest competitor's setup for the DVR. So you're not going to get more people to use a crappy system until you fix it, but you're not going to fix it until more people use it. So it's like the end all be all. You're going to keep on running around in that circle. People aren't going to buy fighters if you're not going to go all in on fighters. You have to sometimes take those risks. And if they feel that they've taken those risks earlier on and it didn't pan out, then I can kind of understand it. But fighters right now are going through its renaissance to some extent. Like we saw a lot of fighters between pretty much last year and this year, or within the past 2 years, between Mortal Kombat 1, between Street Fighter 6, with King of Fighters 15, and then a lot of these remasters and things. I would think it would be in their best interest to at least be able to participate, even if, okay, you can't get it on console. Why isn't it on your Windows store? That should be like, there should be no excuse for that. Like if you're about gaming and you're about preservation, at least still put the code, as far as, yes, a lot of the stuff somewhat overlaps, but there are games on the PC store that don't overlap with console at the slightest, and I don't know why it's not at least there. So once again, it just seems like they're not making some of the best decisions, whether it's because of previous data that wasn't complete or previous data that didn't pan out when fighters weren't as popular as they are at the moment. But in the grand scheme of things, it's good to hear that they are working with them. I wish that they would do more of that. Every time we hear of either misses on Xbox, or maybe a port doesn't quite play as well on Xbox, a lot of times we find out later, oh, well, Sony sent like a team of devs over there to help them
yes,
get the game across the line. And I'm not saying you have to always do what PlayStation does, but you guys should be, being the software giant that you are, be able to afford to do that on occasion. And maybe that would be the helping commitment for some of those other publishers or studios that you don't have, the greatest working relationship with. Although Capcom, they do have an outstanding one. I would think that would only make it stronger and make it easier moving forward, especially if you're, meeting them halfway or working with them for what they would need out of future hardware. Like, we're talking about next gen consoles coming out in 2026, and you want to make sure everything is, backwards compatible and forwards compatible. Start working with these devs now on how this will all play out when it gets to the next console, and so we don't have another one of these mid situations where, the PlayStation 6 can play this game, but somehow the, next Xbox can, or something ridiculous like that. But it's good that they're taking the steps. I'm glad to hear that they're in at least talks or at least working with them. But I really wish that that was more of a norm and not like, oh, well, we got skipped and the community seems upset. Let's now start doing stuff. They should be somewhat a little bit more proactive, or at least that's how I see it. They should be a little bit more proactive, because I gotta say, Street Fighter 6, Mortal Kombat 1, King of Fighters 15, and a bunch of other, like, not Blaze Blue, but like, what's the other one? I forget.
Guilty Gear.
Yeah, Guilty Gear. It's like all of those have been going through like this renaissance at this point. You might as well, jump on board. And I've heard rumors as of 2 years ago that there was supposed to be another Virtual Fighter. Are we going to have a similar situation when it comes to Sega, because we didn't, kind of count on or take, preventative measures to make sure that that's not skipped, or that, the port isn't, in its best condition or best optimization. They need to be on top of these things, at least with a pillar of gaming. And I consider fighting one of those pillars. Some people would say racing games are that too. I tend to believe that. I know there are others that don't, but yeah, I would say fighters are probably next to like platformers in the, hierarchy of games that they should focus on, and not let things like this happen as far as being missed or skipped because of older tech versus newer dev kits and whatnot. So we'll see what comes of it.
Yeah, I mean, only time is going to tell. Look, I'll put it this way. I think this is promising. Corden isn't a BS artist. I don't think he would have reported this. And again, he didn't officially report it. He talked about it on the Xbox 2 podcast, which they normally do. This is a conversation that he was having. And I think it's an important conversation to have. Again, I see some people in the chat that are like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. I hear you. If a 20-year-old fighting game is not your bag, I'm not going to fight you. Like, literally, I'm not going to fight you, whether it be on the screen or in real life. Have an opinion, and you're absolutely entitled and justified to have it. But I will humbly disagree. I think it's incredibly important, because you have a game that is coming back in a big way. It is a fan favorite. It is a cult classic, if you will, and it is available everywhere but the platform that I enjoy the most. And I do feel left out. Like I said, I'm buying it on the Switch. It's not like I'm not going to be able to play it, but I would much rather play it on my Xbox Series X. And I think the fact that there is talks tells me immediately that yes, Xbox is listening. I don't think you would have gotten the same response or even a potential update to the story if it would have been a Nintendo problem or a PlayStation problem. I think that this is clear that they hear the community. And I'm not talking about people just yelling at the sun because they want to complain. I'm talking about actual fans like myself, like Fuzzy, like some people in this chat right now that play these games, whether it be on your Sega Saturn, whether it be on your Sega Dreamcast, whether it be on an older platform, because a lot of the stuff came to OG Xbox, it came to PlayStation. These are legacy titles. And like Jez Corden said in his rebuttal, that it's not just a simple cut and paste port. They're doing things to it to make it look and run better. Why wouldn't you want to play that? Now, okay, and real quick, let me do a little bit of a pushback to people like, yeah, these aren't important. Look, here's the thing. By that mindset alone, the fighting genre shouldn't even exist. Street Fighter 7 shouldn't happen. Mortal Kombat, whatever, shouldn't happen. We shouldn't get a new Killer Instinct or Guilty Gear or a Fatal Fury or a King of Fighters or even a new Tekken. F it. You know why? Because I could tell you this right now, less than 10% of gamers actually play these games. But yet they just spent an entire weekend on Evo where it was the biggest thing happening outside of what happened in Hall H with the MCU. Like, again, that logic, why even bother catering to the fighting community at all? Let's just stop making fighting games altogether. That's ridiculous. It's a small market. If you I mean, like I said, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you look at what Street Fighter 6 sold versus how many platforms it was available, super low numbers. The same thing with Mortal Kombat, the same thing with Tekken, the same thing with the new King of Fighters. They don't sell well because fighting games are a niche market, but it is big business. And I think that there are enough players, specifically on Xbox, to justify Capcom, asking for help. And that, again, who's to blame here, Fuzzy? I don't know. Is it Capcom? Is it Xbox? Is it both? Is it no one? Because obviously, like I said, where I give Xbox the smoke is they knew that this was going to skip the box and they didn't do anything about it. Now, again, that's me just speculating. They could have been a conversation and Capcom just threw their hands up in the air. But like Fuzzy said, they do have a really, really good business relationship with Capcom. So that does not make any sense. But Fuzzy, I think we covered this particular topic to death. Maybe some people enjoyed it. Maybe some people hated it. I hear you if you did or you didn't, but I definitely appreciate you taking the time to be here. We have over 400 live viewers across Twitter and YouTube. And of course, if you're finding the channel for the first time, please, for the love of Joe, consider hitting the like button, hitting the bell icon if you're subscribed. And if you're not subscribed, helping Mrs. Boom and I hit the 15K, because we are damn trying by doing 5 shows a week. And hopefully you're enjoying the shows enough to subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything. You just subscribe and, feeling super generous, hit the bell icon to know every time I go live. But let me just catch up on some super chats here and we will get up to date. So Will Broke Boy Lewis drops an additional very generous $5 super chat and says, opening sequence for DP3 was awesome. It was a movie like Ready Player One. He's talking about it was a movie like Ready Player One if you are going to have to watch several times to catch all of the Easter eggs. Talking about Deadpool 3. Yeah, there are 2 channels that I listen to every day that are Marvel focused that I want to throw out there to you fine folks. One of which is called Emergency Awesome. The guy that runs the channel has over 4 million subscribers. His name is Charlie. Great work. Super detailed. He covers everything. He covers DC. He covers, House of the Dragon. Everything. The Boys. You name it, he covers it. But he's really good with the Marvel coverage. The other one that I happen to really dig, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get him on the show. I'm definitely going to try. His name, Josh from the Den of Nerds. He has a video channel for the Den of Nerds, and he has a live stream channel. Great work from both of them on a daily basis. I highly recommend you subscribe, and they don't need my help getting subs. They have lots and lots of followers, but I happen to really like those. And Deadpool 3, the Easter eggs are just... I'm going on Wednesday to see it with my brother again. I want to check it out. I'm probably going to see this movie 10 times. It's freaking amazing. And like I said, the cameos are just, legendary. JJ saying 117 drops a very generous $2 super chat. He says Persona 5 for the Series X could be Xbox's first gotcha game. It's possible. It's going to be. I'm pretty sure it's going to be on Game Pass. So if they can make that happen, that's going to be a big deal. That's going to be a really, really big deal. And again, we don't know when that's coming. It should be around the corner. If they can get a handheld out next year instead of waiting to 2026, and you have that, and you have a slam dunk. Atticus says this ended the weekend. Oh man, congratulations! He says he ended the weekend by winning the Halo console and Halo Series X edition, thanks to Aaron Greenberg and ILP, who did a big charity event on Sunday. I was a part of it. My slot, if you're looking for it, was the 415 slot with that blue number, which of course Holly, who works with Ben Kenobi. Great charitable event. If you missed it live, there's a lot of guests. It's a long podcast, but it was worth being there and supporting that community, and of course being a part of it was a complete honor. So congratulations, brother, for you winning that. Not only did he get a Series X, the console Halo, he got the Master Chief Elite controller, two rare pieces of Xbox tech. We have Gamer by Choice, who's been a channel member for a whopping 58 months. Dude, thank you so much for the support. He says, boom, we don't know the reason the games are missing Xbox. It could be publishers holding games hostage and Microsoft trying not to set precedents of paying game ransoms. Just because MS isn't as rich doesn't mean to give in. I mean, you're 1,000% right. I don't think that this is the issue, and the reason why I think I can stand on this square and say so is because it wasn't released for the PS5 either. It was released for the PS4, which of course through backwards compatibility is they can play it on the PS5. The difference here is that from how it was explained to me is that the current Xbox dev kits only have the Series X and S components. They do not have the Xbox One components in there. Otherwise, they could make those games for the Xbox One, and then of course they would play on your Series X and S. They could fix that. They can send them dev kits. Microsoft, listen, I understand. I'm not saying that because they are a $3 trillion company, they should throw money away. Not saying that. I'm saying that there are people on their platform that feel a type of way like myself for these games skipping for the fact instead of sending a team or the right dev kits over there to get it done, they didn't do that. That to me is dropping the ball as a customer. But again, they're working on it. I'm happy to hear it, and maybe we'll get some information in the upcoming weeks when we get to Gamescom. Thunderdome Gaming Society, who's been a channel member for 10 months. Brother, thank you so much for the support. He says, it's a big deal. Reason why. The Xbox platform needs variety. At this point in time, Xbox has tons of variety, but this title would make Xbox top tier. I 1,000% agree. JJ saying, 117 says, this after dropping an additional very generous $2 super chat. Having more games helps benefit Xbox. Indeed, it does. But, Fuzzy, I want to bring Phil Spencer, put him on the stand. Not literally, virtually, of course. You know, during the Xbox One era, he was on record of saying that he wanted to bring VR to the platform. And when that didn't happen, he was called a liar. He was called a fibber. That the platform was abandoning VR before it even started. That people in the community really wanted VR, and I hear you. I love VR. I work with it 3 and 4 days a week, actually, to literally change my life because of the working out that I do with it. There are plenty of games that I do play on it. There are 2 games coming at the end of the year: the Batman game for the MetaQuest 3, as well as the new Alien game, which looks dope. I'm going to definitely be getting those 2, and I'll be playing them. And I love VR. You love VR. Kay Asante loves VR. I know a lot of people that really dig VR. But I think we can sit back now in 2024 as we roll into August that Phil Spencer was 1,000% correct in not bringing VR to Xbox. It would have been millions of dollars of investment if they created their own hardware. It would have been millions of dollars of investment for their teams to make games for a third-party peripheral. They could have teamed up with MetaQuest. They could have teamed up with any of the big VR headsets out there. But of course, that takes investment for a market that, let's be real here, folks, super niche. Now, February of last year, the PlayStation VR 2.0 released. They made 2 million units and they sold, well, they shipped 2 million units. They sold about 600,000, which is a fail. Well, we just learned, Fuzzy Belvedere, that well, got some breaking PlayStation news that PlayStation VR has dropped by as much as $200 for each one of the packages. Now, of course, there is a 549 bare bones package that literally just comes with the VR headset and the two controllers. That originally was 549.99. It is now in places like Walmart, like Target. Specifically, the ad I have in front of me is from Best Buy, $349.99. Now, there is a $400 version, which was $600, that came with the Horizon VR game that was made originally for the launch of this peripheral. What's interesting enough, and again, 349 for me, something that's wired. I'm sorry. I when this thing is $100, I'll consider investing. Until it's $100, I'm never going to buy this. One, because all of my PlayStation VR 1 games that I owned at one point, I sold now, were not backwards compatible. And Sony has basically killed all the studios making VR. So, well, there's that. Now, granted, you're going to be able to use this on a PC soon enough. I don't have a PC strong enough to use it. I wouldn't use it for PC. I don't play games on PC. I just don't. Fuzzy, is this basically, does this spell doom for this for a VR 3.0 for Sony? And is this typical, by the book or by the numbers for Sony? When they killed the Vita, they killed the PSP, they killed PlayStation VR 1.0, they killed, obviously they killed 2.0, which has now been discounted by $200. You don't hear anything about PlayStation Portable at all. I think it's another bad investment for Sony on a couple of really bad back-to-back years. Let's get your hot take.
I wouldn't say the price cut's the thing that killed it. It was kind of already dying a slow death prior to that. If you look at a combination of things, they were supposed to, this generation, in comparison to the previous one, have more of the first party studios have different experiences or games. Some of them being, existing games that you can have an experience with it and it's usable, and other games were supposed to be built around this device. The Horizon Climb the Mountain one, or whatever it was called, that was one built around the device. It was basically a tech demo. It was like Astrobot, but for the VR, which, by the way, I'm kind of surprised they didn't have an Astrobot for the VR, but that's another story. And then you had it where you could use it in Gran Turismo, which that was great. That is like the closest you're going to get to like having a racing simulator built in your house. Although you could do the 3-screen deal on a hydraulic rig, but that's going to cost you tens of thousands more to go that route. But it was a awesome accessory for that. But how many people want to spend 550 to experience that on top of, more than likely, to make it worthwhile, having a steering wheel and pedals, also having a racing seat for just one game? Now, I could see if you're also getting like, F1 each and every year that it comes out, and every other racing game under the sun that's multi-plat, like your Motorfest and things like that. But if they're not VR compatible, then you're basically spending this extra 500 on top for just one game, which it's great, but not, at least in my opinion, as much as I like GT7, it's not worth the 550 just to have it for that one game. Now, sure, there are plenty of other games, but a lot of, if not all of, well, with the exception of, I think, of one of two that they had as like exclusives on the PSVR 2, every last one of the other ones you can get on the Quest 2 or Quest 3. So with that being said, the Quest 3 is a better product overall and a little bit cheaper in most cases, except for now with the deep price drop. But it just goes to show that, VR isn't quite ready for mainstream. It's gotten a lot closer, but it still isn't to the point where it's light on your head. The cost is relatively low. Wires are not so cumbersome. I mean, yes, you don't have to worry about wires as much with like the Quest models and things like that, but still, if you are going to do the tethered experience to, go that next level with your PC games and things that are VR compatible, that's great. But when the PSVR 2 finally is allowed to be on PC, it's not going to have a lot of its features, whether it's the haptic feedback in the headband itself or some of the other things as far as the visuals compared to when it's hooked to a PS5, which there are plenty of people out there with, rigs that are twice as powerful as a PS5 currently, and they're not going to get any of the benefit when it hooks there. Now, I can understand to some extent proprietary stuff, you'd want to make the experience as good as you can on PS5, but I said from get go, it was a mistake to not make it out of the box compatible with PC in the fashion that would be usable above and beyond their own, platform of games. And if they're still trying to court the PC player, they could get a head start by having it where the PC player buys that VR headset and then they might wind up picking up, the next, Forbidden West or whatever that is VR centric, not just the climb the mountain one, or the, Gran Turismo 8 where it's, built around being a VR game from get go, where all the interiors are modeled as opposed to just a handful of them and stuff. But yeah, it kind of sucks that it didn't, hit the ground running or have the success that they would have hoped. But it is what it is when it comes to VR at this point. As far as Phil's decision, I think there's more to it behind the scenes between them and Meta or Facebook or however you want to refer to that company at this point. But part of the whole VR vision that I think he had in the past, because it was kind of well known that they had a partnership with them, and it was going to be that some of those Quest models were going to be just basically rebadged Xbox Ones as far as for use on the console. But for whatever reason, numbers didn't match up or pricing didn't quite fit the scheme that they were going for, or the coding or programming aspect took a lot longer for games that were not built from the ground up to be a VR game, which that seems to be probably the biggest thing. There's so much that it takes as far as investment building VR games. And if you look at some of them, not picking on the graphical fidelity of the game itself, but they're not on the level that you're used to seeing with your own eyes looking at a TV screen. And it's going to be some time before we truly get there and have it where they're lightweight and where they're low cost and minimal wires. So I think it was probably a good decision to not really push or invest as much into it. Although at this point, Microsoft is a big enough company that they can lean on some of their partners like Meta, like Valve, for example, and things along those lines, or even any of the other 3D headset or VR headsets that were out there, and have it where they can make things compatible. But then you have to take into account how long is that going to delay game production. And we already know publishers want to, push games out the door unfinished and then kind of patch them later. Just imagine them adding that another layer of it being a VR game at the same time. So I think the industry isn't quite there yet when they can get things streamlined, and a VR game takes no longer to make than a standard game where it can be made simultaneously and not blow the budget out of, the water kind of deal. I think that's when it stands a better chance. But like right now, it looks like Sony seems less interested in investing in that and more interested in investing in PC, which, by the way, is probably their best way to get more users on their platform, or at least in their ecosystem, making purchases of games or microtransactions or what have you. The VR space right now, Meta's killing it. And as much as people would be like, well, what about the Vision Pro from Apple? Yeah. When we're
Garbage.
talking about when Apple can make the Vision 3 non-pro edition that's for the masses for about $500, because they're not going to lower their price below that on something along those lines, and they still have their Vision Pro 3 or whatever, they'll be 1100 to 1500. That's when maybe we're at that point where it's for the masses and things can be more centered around VR and AR. But until then, MetaQuest 3, I would say by the time the MetaQuest 4 comes out, that will be even another step closer to being ready for the masses, where it'll probably still be the same price. It'll just be smaller well, not smaller optics, but smaller device, lighter device,
Yep.
less wires, faster charge, longer battery life, things along those lines. And at that point, I think it will start to grow even further and maybe even cross over into, console gaming where, hey, you buy the Meta Quest, you hook it to your Series X2 or your PS6 if one exists. And from there, you'll be able to experience, almost everything in first person that way. But I don't think studios are that far yet or that close to that yet. And the hardware cost, right, at least at the moment, they're not willing to cut those profits or those margins deep enough to make it that much more viable. But it's a shame to see that PSVR 2 didn't have the success that they had hoped. I was kind of quietly rooting for it, but in that same sense, I was also rooting for them to do more first party stuff that would be VR compatible. Like, imagine being Kratos in a first person perspective from his eyes with the VR headset. The fact that they didn't make that just seems a little off to me, that
I
wasn't a
agree.
thing that they did.
Yep.
Or the same thing with Spider-Man. I mean, yeah, you'd probably have a lot of people throwing up like they say they'll do for Indiana Jones. Yeah, swinging from, skyscraper to skyscraper in New York, and you just threw up in your living room. But yeah, I'm surprised that they didn't find a way to make it work where they could have those experiences for those games with that headset. To me, that would have been the must have or must buy, apps for that device to make it worthwhile for the $550+ or whatever it was going for at the time. But as of now, I'm still looking at the Quest 3. Don't have it just yet. Bought my sons both a Quest 2, so they're still enjoying those. But they don't play on it every day. They're
Right.
more so on their PC than anything. But it's a worthwhile experience if you have the means to. But the PSVR 2, I don't think was quite as appealing for that price range compared to a Quest 2 or 3 at the time. I think the Quest 3, even though PSVR 2 had better optics versus a library that's twice as large and optics that aren't too far behind and has a better, pass through that's in color. Yeah, I think
Yes.
the Quest 3 is the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know some people ask talking about the Metro game. Metro game has been announced for the Quest 3 as well. That is also releasing later this year. I know some people were like, yeah, the Quest 3 needs more games. Well, they have three big ones coming. Batman, the new Arkham game, which is VR exclusive, which surprisingly enough looks phenomenal. The new Alien game, of course, if you like jump scares, I know Fuzzy would be into that because he likes horror. That game looks dope. And of course, now the Metro game. They have a lot of games releasing, and they also have the one that came with the what the heck's the name of it? Something is Wrath. I actually got that for free with mine. Mrs. Boom bought it for me as well. And that's supposed to be like tip of the spear VR. I haven't played it yet because I've only used my VR for working out. Surprisingly enough, I've played some like silly stuff on there, like Fruit Ninja. I played that on because that's just silly. That's 5 seconds. It's like Beat Saber. Who doesn't play that? That's awesome. But I actually use my MetaQuest 3 strictly for working out, which I did earlier today, and it was freaking amazing as it was 28 weeks ago. But
Well,
yeah, do you want to
the
add
one
some
thing,
context?
well, yeah, like the key thing that people have to understand, the Quest 3 is its own independent device. You don't need a
Yes.
console, you don't need a PC to play those games. They have a library larger than what the PSVR 2 has by
Yes.
far, just on itself. Now, they're not all the games that you might be used to. Now, when you add into effect that, let's say you have a PC and you have a Steam account or you have an Epic Game Store account, there are a lot of games that are VR compatible. All of those, if you can plug your Quest 2 or Quest 3 into that, can be used for that. So it has a lot more of a library to access than what you can on the PSVR 2. It's just that the PSVR 2 has access to certain exclusives within PlayStation. And if you were to compare library to library, I think the count is less than 5 that you cannot find either on PC and hook your Quest 2 or
Yep.
on the Quest itself in its store. So I would say it's the library, even though the PlayStation one has a decent library, 90% of those games are on the Quest already. So
Yeah. That's good. It's a great point. But look, at the end of the day, it has dropped in $200, price point of $200. So now it's $349 for the bare bones model and $399.99 for the one that comes with the Horizon mountain climbing game, which wasn't reviewed very well. Again, I personally would not invest in that at the price point, as even at the $200 drop in price. They've already killed all their studios that are going to make VR games. They're not making any first party VR games. If there are some in development, maybe they release those. Who knows? But we haven't heard anything. They gave up on it, and you should not invest unless this thing is like again, if it's a $200 device, I'll pick it up for $200. I'm not picking it up for $400. There's just no way. Because again, it's Sony does what Sony does. They, you know, hype up something, piece of tech, and they do what they always do, not support it, and they kill studios, and it's okay. So they're not getting my money, but make sure we're caught up on all the super chats here, brother, and then we will get everyone out of here. Big thank you for everyone that tuned in. We had, again, for a summertime show with not a lot of news, we had over 400 people here. Mrs. Boom and I are incredibly grateful that you showed up in a big way. A big thank you to all of the super chats that continue to come in, as well as the channel memberships. You know what? Real quick, while we're talking about giveaways, obviously with the delay of Stalker 2, which went from September 5th now to November 20th, that contest, it's still active. We are just moving it to obviously coincide with the game. So when the game releases in November 20th, Mrs. Boom and I, to, of course, one mom and pop organization helping another mom and pop organization, we're giving away 15. That's right, 15 copies of Stalker 2, and we're buying them on our dime at full boat, and we're going to give them away to you. The first 8 giveaways are going to be anyone that is a channel member, and the second 7 of them, the second half, the 7 that are left over, will be anybody that is in the chat that, of course, is subscribed. That is the only caveat. If you are subscribed and you're in the chat when we do the giveaway and your name gets picked, you win. If you're not subscribed, I'm sorry to tell you, folks, we'll just pick somebody else. We cannot do these big giveaways for people that are not even going to support us through just subbing the channel. No, you don't got to put any money into it. Just simply be in the chat, be sub to the channel. You got a shot to win. And we can't, if you're not going to at least sub the channel, we can't involve you in this contest. I don't think that's fair. But with that said, Fuzzy, let's sell your brand, brother. But I don't want to just sell your brand. Everyone knows about Fuzzy Belvedere's YouTube channel. It's the best place for anything and everything in the racing genre. Not only that, he guests and co-hosts plenty of shows on a weekly basis. Not only does he work with Mav a couple of times a week, he also works with 3-Bit on Pixelated Echoes, a great show that you should tune into as well. But his wife has a new horror podcast. I want to see her get some subs over there. Fuzzy, sell the brand of not only yourself, but talk about your wife's new horror podcast that is now going to be episode number 4 this Friday. Let's talk about it.
Well, as always, Boom, thank you so much for having me on. And thanks to everybody in the chat for showing up. Greatly appreciate you guys taking the time to check us out. For those that want to hear and everything about, well, at least on my end for gaming, just follow me on Twitter at Fuzzy_Belvedere. But also follow Ferocious Fee 78 on Twitter or X or whatever you choose to call it these days. That's my wife. She's big into the horror genre as far as whether it be slashers, zombie movies, anything in that space. That's where, if you're a fan of that, definitely give her a follow, as well as a follow on YouTube. Just do a search on YouTube for Ferocious Fee, and the podcast is called Fright Night with Ferocious Fee. It's every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Basically, we pick either a movie or a particular horror genre to talk about. This past podcast and this upcoming podcast are going to be more so about some of the events we're going to, because we're going to Monster Mania this weekend. So it's going to be kind of a shorter show. But after that, when we come back, we're going to be talking slashers. And I believe we'll have Web Dave as a host or as a special guest. as well as Silent Cypher, to talk about some modern day slashers and some of the goodness and how those movies have progressed. But overall, horror fan, if it's horror video games, horror movies, definitely give my wife a follow. Once again, Ferocious Fee. It's Ferocious Fee 78 on Twitter. The 78 has to do with Night of the not the Night of the Living Dead, but the Dawn of the Dead, the original, which we actually went to the mall over in I think it's Monroeville for that not too long ago. But
That's cool,
yeah.
dude.
Yeah, it's an awesome time to be a video game fan, but also an awesome time to be a horror movie fan as well. So definitely give us a follow. Check out everything that we do on Twitter as well as on YouTube. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, real quick, folks. Yeah, obviously, Mrs. Boom and I are into Korean dramas. That's our thing. If you're a zombie fan, if you're a horror fan, and you want a couple of really, really good ones, we just finished 2 over the weekend. We eat these things up like yum, 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 yum. It's unbelievable. Happiness is one. It's really good. The other one is The Zombie Detective. It's a little quirky, but it's good. So it's got like a serial killer kind of a backdrop to a zombie detective, which is really cool. The other one is All of Us is Dead. That was freaking phenomenal. I think it's like that one was like 16 episodes, really good. And Sweet Home just finished season 3. So those if you're into a Korean dramas like Mrs. Boom and I, those are zombie ones that I think you would definitely dig for sure. But of course, a big thank you to everyone that tuned in today. We super appreciate you checking us out over here. Oh, wait a second. We got 2 more super chats that popped in here. One of which from Andre Doyle, who drops a very generous $2 super chat and says, Deadpool Wolverine, amazing. Only one. Yeah, I don't want to say what the last word is. Don't read the chat, folks. But yes, that was it's really good. It's phenomenal. Gamer by Choice, welcome back, brother. Nice to see you here, and thank you for the continued support. He drops a very generous $2 super chat and says, enjoying news and passion from gaming for gaming with Boom and Fuzzy. Yeah, brother, thank you so much. We listen, we love doing this, which is why Fuzz is here twice a week. He guests on so many other people's shows. He does his wife's show on Fridays. He does videos, and that's why I stream 5 days a week, because I love this community. I love gaming, and I love talking about it, and I never, ever get bored. But again, a big thank you to everyone that tuned in. Of course, the rest of the week is going to have continued coverage. I am already working on Tuesday's show, Wednesday's show as well. And then obviously when we get to the Thursday and Friday show, hopefully more news will come in that will keep you entertained. And of course, I'm going to close out the show with something that's incredibly important to me. Hopefully one day, folks, it'll be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And it would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. And we'll see you next week on the newest episode of the Xbox Lunch Break Special.